McGinnis. I am an alcoholic. Can you hear me? Would those of you who care to please join me in opening the meeting by reciting our AA prayer? God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, wisdom to know the difference. It's always a drag to try to get through these preliminaries, but they have to be gotten through so that we all get on the same wavelength here. Number one, I want to remind you this again and again, because there's nothing more important in AA to be reminded of, that I nor any other member of this fellowship speak officially for Alcoholics Anonymous. In fact, there is no official viewpoint for Alcoholics Anonymous. We hear very often the book referred to as our only authority, quote. But even that, quote, only authority constantly reminds you that it is meant to be suggestive only. What I'm doing up here is what every other member of this fellowship tries to do, and that is to share my opinions, my convictions, my beliefs, based upon my experience with you. They are my opinions. They can be held against me, but not against AA. And if you keep this in mind, then nothing I say up here need distress you at all. So please always remember that that is the premise upon which any member of AA speaks to you, whether he remembers to tell you that or not. Number two, if you're a beginner and you haven't been around for but a few... Can't hear it all? Okay, all right. You hear me? Thank God my Irish forebears gave me a loud mouth. Where was I? Number two. If you are a beginner, and what I start talking to you about up here tonight is brings to your mind a question that sounds something like, what in the hell is he talking about? I came here to learn how to stop drinking. All you need to be told tonight, or at any other meeting for a long, long time, is that you don't have to listen to any of this if you don't want to. If you're a newcomer, all you have to do, only thing you have to remember for a long time is all you have to do is stay away from the first drink. And you're going to ask how that's done. That is done in one way and one way only. You don't take any food through your mouth. Any other opening that I know. The only motivation that you can have for this, really, that makes any sense at all, is that you value being sober more than you value being drunk. And we can't give that motivation to you. That has to come from inside. So, but that's all you have to keep in mind. That's the only way any of us ever stay sober. We did not come here and find a pill, or some exercises, or a diet with leafy green vegetables that helped us stay sober. We found out that we had to take the first step. We had to admit that we were alcoholics. And we had to decide in our own minds whether or not we valued sobriety. If we did, and when I define sobriety, I mean the absence from the bloodstream of booze or any other kind of chemical that will change your thinking. Now, what we started here, first series of this month, was what I like to refer to as the workshop on alcoholism. And we tried to keep the theme going by asking ourselves certain questions. And I won't get where I wanted to get if I try to review each one of them. So I'm only going to review where we left off last week. Last week, we asked ourselves the question, what are the old ideas as referred to in the book? Preamble to Chapter 5 that we here read from California, all through it. The second, one of the most significant in the book, I believe, says many of us tried to hang on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. So we tried to define what are the old ideas, because we found out we had to do it. We had, in the previous weeks, we've gone through the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth steps. We had taken our inventory as well as we knew how. We had activated this by admitting to God, to ourselves, and to another human being who's that nature of our own. we found that it's a common experience, practically everyone, that after the initial euphoria and practically shedding of weight that takes place when this is done, the old drive, the old fears, the old neuroses, the old self-recrimination, the old troubles return, little by little by little. So last week, in working this out, we found that what really happened was that these old ideas started way, way back in childhood. And what we were doing was that we were really being motivated by an unholy trinity of first guilt, a subjective guilt that came from a feeling of unworthiness that had been passed on to us by our parents and the other giants of our childhood who shaped and molded our childhood. A feeling that we had failed to win the approval and the love to which we felt we were entitled, and that we had somehow made the reason we had failed was because it was our fault, that there was something that was either missing in us or we were doing wrong. And when this guilt got to us pretty good, we tried to express it. We tried to test whether or not we could do anything about it. And because it aroused in us a great resentment and a great anger, and we tried to express this anger, because anger will not go away. And something has to be done about it, or it finds an outlet, even though it may wear 1,000 masks. We found that the child can't express his anger because he's not big enough. He can't get away with it. Pygmies don't win battles with giants, and he is surrounded by giants. So as I said, since the anger won't go away, we found out that what he really begins to do very, very early as a child is to both mask the anger, to try to express it in different ways, but mainly to turn it in upon himself, chiefly because he does feel guilty, and because he feels that he has failed, because he feels that he is an unworthy person in his own right. And to make the subjective guilt which he has been haunted by real, he begins to rebel. He begins to be a bad boy, a bad girl. He begins to sin secret sins. He makes this guilt in his mind real because he can't forgive himself for having encouraged this guilt and encouraged this anger. And now these two beget the final thing, fear, which grows and grows and grows, and is mainly of two varieties, the fear of punishment and the fear of discovery, the fear of being found out. Now, that's where we left off last week. This is going to be the soil in which the future alcoholics, the future neurotics, and I'd like if you would to use those terms interchangeably in your mind. This is where it all begins and accompanies him for the rest of his life until he begins to find out what's going on in some way, somehow. And since we here tell you that it is the opinion of AA, by most of us, that alcoholism is a symptom of deeper trouble, then this is what motivates the ability to be able to face life on its terms without the aid of food. Now, let us say that at this time the child, having been nurtured on these three currents, at the breast of these three currents, has somehow or other got to devise some kind of a survival plan. I think what he does, at least this way it came to me, I think as a little child sits back, stands back, gives the world a long, long look, and carefully divides it into two groups. Those who hate him and those who don't like him. Now, they are the enemy. They become bad. And he feels, always of course, that he didn't make them the enemy. Something about him caused him to be the enemy. That he is unworthy, he is guilty. But he must try to hide this, and he must not let them know how angry he is at them, and how angry mainly he is at himself. So when you have two groups, those who hate you and those who don't like you, you're going to have some kind of way to survive. And generally, classically, all neurotics start out about it the same way. They play two games. One game might be called, if I can make them love me own person. And this is the name of the game in which all of the things of the seeking for approval, the seeking for admiration, for acceptance, for getting instantaneous, universal love from the world. Now, even the little kid knows in his little tiny childish mind, he's been around long enough, that you're not really going to get all of your enemies to love you, even though he's never going to give up trying. But there's no use having just one plan of attack. He balances this with another game, and this game might be called, if I am stronger than they are, then they can't hurt me. So he's got himself protected both ways. He's hedging his bet. This is where he comes in when Jesus got all the blessings of society for this. He now competes. He is going to keep on proving that Mama and Dad were wrong. He is really the best. He is really worthy of love and admiration. And he's going to show all these giants that they were wrong. Because he's going to be better than they are, stronger than they are, which is where the sense of guilt came from in the first place, by his always being told that he wasn't. Now, this has very acceptable names in our environment, in our culture, in our society. It's called competing. It's called being in an honor group, being at the top of 10, etc., etc., etc. Well, you see, that's the trouble. There's only room for 10 in the top. And there's more. There's more than 10. And then the one who is number 1, there's 9 behind him. And he's not sure that all 9 of them should be ahead of him. So it gets very, very mixed up on this thing. Now, this is the plan of survival, which the neurotic, the future alcoholic embarks on. It's obvious that he's going to have to put together some pretty good tools and have some pretty good strategies. And he puts together what you might call a little do-it-yourself survival kit. Now, he calls it a survival kit because he thinks that's the way it is. He looks upon these things as escape routes. This is the way he keeps distance. This is the way he keeps alive. This is the way he keeps breathing room. This is the way he keeps everybody from finding out and destroying it. In reality, what it is, it's a do-it-yourself torture kit. Because all of this, as we will hope that we can examine tonight and see, all these things really, the ultimate result of it, since the two drives, the drive for approval and the drive to dominate, the drive to get people to love you and the drive to get people to fear you, wipe each other out constantly, except you're always this way. This is why there is such a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde pattern to the life of most neurotics and most alcoholics. Now, what are some of the, shall we call them, tools in our survival kit? Some of the common things by which people implement this plan, this double-barrel technique of being loved and feared in the same breath. Because this is exactly what the neurotic wants. He wants to be loved. He wants tears to come into the eyes of people as they behold. And at the same time that they are shaking with love for him, they are to shake with fear of him. And their knees are to be knocked, so that they don't dare offend him, and only the Roosevelt will stop in his back. While he is, of course, secretly convinced that what he should be being is shot down in the sun like a dog. Well, here are some. I made up in my mind this afternoon a list of 9. There's probably a lot more, but these 9 came to me because they were all of them in my little do-it-yourself kit. Now, I will not name them in any particular order. I have my ideas of what are the number 1s and so on down. But you can put them in whatever order you want to. I'll just throw out a few of them and see if this makes any sense to you. I'm going to start first on one that might surprise you. And that is religion. Most of the people, there's a statement over the years that has reverberated from the walls of AA meetings. Probably you will hear it less as time goes by, I don't know. I still hear it from the podium again and again. And the statement is, I tried religion and it failed. Now, this would lead me to believe that, most of the people who come into AA have some kind of religious background that is still sitting in their minds. probably a lot more than they ever cared to admit. Number two, it also leads me to believe that this must have been a very important tool in the survival kit, as it was with me. Now, I can only speak about the Christian religion because that is the one in which I was born and in which I was raised. And of course, there's a great saying that D.K. Chesterton wrote once. He said, Christianity has not really failed. It has just not ever been tried. So, please, I tend to agree with Mr. Chesterton, so please believe that and understand that my remarks here tonight are in no way in criticism of your religion, my religion, or anybody else's religion. What I'm talking about here tonight is how it becomes adapted as a tool in the torture kit because of the way that it is presented to the child. And I'm afraid that this comes about because all too often religion and God being submitted to the child and presented to the child by the figures of authority who represent him and with whom he is forever going to be identified in the child's mind. God is presented not as a support, not as a refuge, not as somebody that will accept you in your own right. He is more or less submitted as an arbiter, a judge, a code, and a scorekeeper. Maybe a lot of times he's like nothing more than glorified teller and bank. If you have something on deposit, he will be there at the window. And you can go up and write a check and stick it through the window and he will look at it, check your deposit, and if there's something there, he will honor the check. But the trouble is, nearly all of us are always overdrawn. So, we stay away from the bank. And religion becomes a thing which we use to flagellate ourselves. It becomes an inaccessible frame of reference, a standard of performance by which we're never going to achieve, so that in our self-flagellation, self-destruction, torture, we can constantly keep going around saying, I can't do it, I tried, I can't do it, but he doesn't listen to me. Who am I to ask God? Mea culpa, get out the prayers, get out the abstinence, get out all the things. Let's drape the church in black because this penitent is not really ever going to make it. A prodigal son, at least of me, in the beautiful story in the Bible, the prodigal son comes home. It is assumed that he stays. I was always coming and leaving. The prodigal son I played in serial fashion. Every time I got back, I thought, I don't really belong here. He doesn't really like me. I'll never make it, so it's on to the car hut again. Now, this is one of the tools. Let's move on to another one. It's obvious that the neurotic in this survival, this enemy territory, is going to have some multi-purpose weapons. Some things that can serve a lot of purposes and be adaptable to a lot of use and be set up awfully quick. Now, let's take one of the tools that brought us here. Booze. You keep the word booze in your mind, and let's see how multi-purpose it is. Let's just, as you think about booze and all the different circumstances and environments that you use it, let's ask ourselves, let's go down the list of some of the needs that we've experienced over the years and how we express them. The need to celebrate. The need to rebel. The need to relax. The need to dominate. The need for bravery. The need for stimulation. The need to express anger. The need to find courage. The need to blot out remorse. The need to get up nerves to do what we didn't have the nerve to do sober. The need to forget that we got drunk to do what we couldn't do sober. So you begin to see that this is a very multi-purpose tool. Now let's try another one with the same question. Let's take that wondrous three-letter word sex. and ask the same questions. You're going to say sex is a multi-purpose tool in the survival kit or a torture kit. You mean sex can be a neurotic implement? Look at it, then take the same question. The need for admiration, the need for approval, the need for acceptance, the need to dominate, the need to humiliate, the need to degrade, the need to withhold, the need to punish. Does this little letter word fit in? I was talking the other day to a guy along these lines, and he said to me, Al, everything you say is making very great sense, but he says, I certainly never use sex as a means of winning approval. He says, with me it was a forthright thing that I enjoyed. And I said, what do you mean to tell me that you have never recited the Lover's Litany? And he said, what's that? I said, you have never heard coming out of your mouth at certain moments, do you love me? Am I the best? How do I know? And you've never heard this? Let's go on to another one. I think we've dwelt there long enough. We come now to one tool that I call, because it's so personified, it's a personification, the critic. The critic. And I'm sure you all know people like this, but I'm quite sure that you probably don't recognize it in yourself, and you do. But the critic, I very rarely ever find an alcoholic who, as a matter of fact, there are a lot of medical men and psychiatrists and psychologists who've made a study over alcoholism over the years, and they think that hypercriticism, a hypercritical attitude towards everybody around you, is unfailingly present in the makeup of every alcoholic. But you see, the critic, he's got a tool that he uses himself. Besides being this methodology being an implement of escape, the tool that is used is humiliation. Humiliation. Because that is what was used against him. As a child, this is really where the punishment, this is really where the anger started. It was not so much the physical punishment, it was the withholding of love, the withholding of approval, that was being told that we weren't measured up. As a matter of fact, after 70 years of clinical experience, the world's philosophers, psychiatrists, psychologists are almost unanimously agreed that modern man...
You at all here need to strain, and nothing I say, if you keep this in mind, and not against AA, but now can be held against you. They are my opinions with you, on my experience, based on my beliefs, my convictions, my opinions, that is to share my view, and this fellowship tries to a member of the other. Here is what I'm doing not here. Be suggestive only. It meant to remind you that it might be constantly, quote, only a thought, but even that might be, quote, as our only a thought in the book refers to, we're here very always anonymous. We do for alcohol, no official viewpoint. In fact, there is anonymous. For Alcoholics Anonymous, officially, this fellowship, other member of mine or any other that minded of, again, AA to be. There's nothing more important, again, because of this, again, I want to remind, page link here. Number one, on the same way, so that we all have to be got through. But these preliminaries, if you try to get through, there's always a drive. Know the difference. Things that very difficult. Like, to accept the things. That means serenity. God grant. AA prayer meetings are reciting on me and opening them. Please join those of you who care to. With those, can you hear me? I'm an alcoholic.
There's the one. I didn't do it. I've been here all the time, world, trying my best, trying to do what I could, world. And all the while you've been out there plotting, drifting up. And who wouldn't get drunk? Who wouldn't leap from motel to motel? Who wouldn't rebel against God the way they are? those tigers and those other things that are out there. Carried to the extreme, this is known as paranoia. So be careful if you are convinced that when two people are whispering, they are talking about you. I could be in a room where it was a big crowd and it would be hard to see me because I'm not very tall. But I could see two people over in the corner talking, and I wasn't sure they were talking about me. I wasn't sure that you could see me, but I knew that they were discussing me, and I knew what it was they were saying. I've finished the 9. I've got to move on to this. Is withdrawal. The name of withdrawal. Now, this is another phrase you hear in AA over and over. I'm a loner. Why are we all loners? We're alone. And we're going to look like a cotton thing. Look, we're special. We're special and we're loners, you know? I just see trouble with this. What's the reason? You have all kinds of euphemisms for this. Oh, God, how I've used them over the years. I went around saying, I always felt apart from. And I've heard this many times on the lips of other people. I think maybe we're giving ourselves a break there. I was giving myself a break, and I was using a very euphemistic expression for what I really felt, and that was that I was unacceptable to. Not apart from. I was unacceptable to. Now, how do you keep people from finding out that you are unacceptable to things? You say apart from things. This way, they're in the wrong, and they don't find out that anything about you. Withdrawal, again, again and again, as we go through these, try to refer them back to those 3 things. The guilt, the anger, and the fear. See how they are inextricably intertwined. I think this loner business is nothing at all but this guilt, this feeling of unworthiness, this feeling that we really do not matter in our own right. We have no importance of our own. We have no self-approval. We have no self-esteem, and we do not want this found out. So therefore, we have to be apart from. We cannot risk being vulnerable. We cannot risk being found that we are anything less than perfect. Another one would be, this one, again, is that, this really has become a word, it's become one of the great cliches in AA, I really believe, but it's funny how the newcomer picks them up, that word, before even the newcomer, it seems to me these days, before he was really able to pronounce the word anonymous, he is telling you about his resentment. Now, and we hear about how do I get rid of resentment? You see, again, we're coming to this magic formula that must be found. I came in, and I took my inventory, on about the 5th day, because I'd read the book, and I've been to a couple of meetings, which I felt I could improve on, and there was no use wasting any time about this. Good thing I did take my inventory too soon, because I was about to have to speak, and I was able to speak on this. Now, on my inventory, there was no word resentment. And I thought, this is here in book, right here, I found the sentence. It says, resentments are a luxury the alcoholic cannot afford. And I thought, hell, I don't even have this luxury. I don't even have this luxury to give up. I'm poorer than I thought. I don't have any resentment. I resent myself. That was very resentment. The number one person that I disliked was me. But I didn't think I disliked anybody else. Well, the fact of the matter is, if I had started to make a list of the people I resented, it would have been endless. I never would have gotten through the inventory, because we could have started with God, worked through Adam and Eve, on down. Finally, we ended up with my boss, a few others that were inhabiting my world and spoiling my Garden of Eden at that moment. Why was I so violent? Why is it But on the other hand, why do so many other people pick it up and say, right away, I have resentment? I think it's because they express itself in two different ways. I just realized what I have come to believe now, that an indispensable ingredient to forming resentment is that the person must pose some kind of a threat to you. Now, when I use the word threat, it might bring the wrong image of God, and I don't know any other word to use. What I mean by posing a threat to you is that this person stands there as a, well, and I come back to this word threat. You might use, maybe we could, let's try some other words. Let's try jealousy, envy. These are pretty accurate words. Now, in envy, the person poses a threat because the person has something you want. So they threaten your security. They threaten your opinion of yourself. They threaten your being successfully able to conceal from the world the fact that you do not have what this other person has. Jealousy is the same way. The person is posing a threat. It's odd, but if you will ask yourself, maybe it will make it more clear if I say this. You never resist someone who is unimportant to you. It is always somebody who matters a great deal. So that person in some way poses a threat. That person can harm you in some way by withdrawing from you, by punishing you, by denying you in some way, denying you their friendship, denying you their love, withdrawing from you, punishing you. Some way they pose a threat. You do not resent unimportant people. People that are unimportant to you, rather, I should need to clarify that. Now, that is, to me, is the way you begin to get resentment. I don't believe, and I'm not saying not to try it, I'm just saying it didn't work for me. I don't think you can pray away resentment. I don't think you can smile them away. I don't think you can go along saying things like, it's really not the person, it's the principle of the thing. You know, you just make these speeches and they fall, and they really way inside of you, you know how powerful they are. I think you have to face it head on. What is this? What is this person? In what way do you face this? Why is this person so important to me? And then deal with it on that basis in a way that we'll get around to discussing next week, because I want to get on and finish this up. But that's resentment. Now, another one is, and this one is not quite often recognized, but it plays a very great role. It ties back to religion. It ties back to a lot. In other words, it has different phrases. And to try to bring it to you in a fresh way, I'm going to use a different way of saying it tonight, see if it makes it any clearer. And that is, I call it the neurotic need for fallibility. You've heard it referred to. It's the same thing. We're talking about the same thing when you talk about perfection complex. What it is, it works in many, many ways. But again, it comes back to this original guilt, the original fear, and the anger. That if I in myself, if way from a tiny kid I learned for all time that I in myself have no worth, that I in myself cannot win any kind of approval, then there's somewhere I must find some kind of perfect answer. Somewhere in the world there must exist something that which there is no flaw, because this becomes security for me. This represents salvation. This is my magic talisman, and this is the thing I'm going to win through with in the end. A lot of times it's religious. A lot of times it's comfort. A lot of times it's AA. You come in here with this is the thing that's been found, so therefore there must be no criticism of it. This is when I came in to AA, there must be no criticism of my religion. Because you must not find any flaw in that, because it destroyed my security. It destroyed my security. And then I found that other people had the same attitude towards AA. A lot of people had the same attitude towards psychiatry. Any other, name it. Whether it's free love, hippies, pot, LSD, name it. Somebody is trying that out because they think it is the perfect answer. It is going to be the solution. It is going to be perfect. It is going to have no flaws. And you know what the perfect answer is? The final security is, if you live long enough, work long enough, face it hard enough, find out that there is no perfect answer. Everything on this earth comes to you through creatures, and creatures are not perfect. So there is no perfect organization. There is no perfect formula. There is no perfect man, nor perfect woman, nor perfect therapy, nor perfect anything. Your final security lies in trying to do what you can with what you have and what you are. This leads us to the last one. All along, what we've been talking about is a human being who is living his life on the defensive, right? The little tiny child who embarks against this giant enemy, the two groups, those who hated him and those who didn't like him. He's been living his life on the defensive. Now, if you live your entire life on the defensive, it follows as the night today that you must have something to defend against. If you don't, you're out of business. All of your partnership, all of your survival, you're not going to make it because nobody is pushing you around, and the only thing you know how to do is defend. Defend. This is how you are surviving. Of course, it is how you are dying, but you think it is the way you are surviving. So there comes this need for crisis, the neurotic need for a crisis. If things are going well, my God, we're going to die. Now there's something wrong. How in the hell? What do we do with the torture kit? What do we do with it? Where goes my self-pity? You know, what comes first, my martyrdom? And where are my resentments? How am I going to live? There's no end out there. You know? So we make it. We write this script. We play it over and over. When you get right down to it, one of the best definitions of a neurosis is the fact that you are enacting a childhood drama over and over and over again. You write the same script. It's like the TV series. All the TV writers. But what you do is you change the name, and you change the locale, and you change the cast of the characters, but it's always either the water hole, or the barbed wire, or the guy who doesn't want to draw his son anymore. And we play it over and over and over again. This is what it's like. He is enacting the drama. If there's no crisis around, he makes one. And we'll talk about that next week. How you counteract that with a much more constructive thing. But the need for a crisis, not long ago, some months ago, I sat down with a guy that was really going out of his mind. He was falling up the wall. And we went down one by one by one. He'd done a lot of work, so it wasn't difficult. We went into all of this stuff. And finally, I looked at him and I said, "Do you know what you are suffering from? I really believe." He said, "What's that?" I said, "You don't have a crisis." Nothing is wrong with your life. So you are here, rending your garment, and saying, "Alan, what should I do? What have I missed? Where have I failed? What did you do when you felt like this?" I did the same thing. I went out and screwed things up again. So I just get in there and straighten them out. With our material. I got to be in there and I got to take care of it, And you carry this to ridiculous extremes. You plan it, you plot it. For years, I hired people who were inferior to me. I didn't know that I was doing that. I kept running around saying, couldn't find a good writer, couldn't find a good art director. God, I don't know what's happened today. They got turned them out. There's no telling around. All along the money. I was unconsciously but deliberately hiring people so that we would have good work and that I could come along with a campaign and fix it up. Say, well, I did it again, and then go home and say they don't appreciate me, they don't pay me. Okay, that's not enough. It's 10 to 8. We've got 10 minutes for questions. Any questions? Out there, somewhere? You gonna let me quit? All right.
Do you have any pointers on the taking to the fourth step?
Fourth?
Yes. That's any favorite pointers?
Well, question, do you have any pointers on how to take the fourth step? I've read guides on how to take the fourth step. I've read outlines, suggested outlines. I have read what it says in the book, and all of them have a great deal to offer. But I think the simplest thing in the world to do the first time around
And I've seen it bring good results with practically everybody that's ever tried it. First time around, if you haven't done it before, just sit down, but write. Sit down and try to tell yourself the story of your life in plain, unvarnished terms. Keeping the good things that happened to you, the bad things, what you did, but always covering those things that make you feel guilty, make you feel ashamed, make you feel that you want to run away and die, hide. And when you have finished with this, if you have done it, take your time, done it as honest as you can, no matter. And of course, as you're writing to me, this is part of the therapy. More and more will you do. You don't need to be upset about this. This is part of the growing therapy of AA. But when you have finished this, I think you will have a perspective on your life as an event and as on a pattern of behavior that you never had before, because you kept taking segments of yourself or else dismissing yourself, as we all were prone to do, by saying, well, as one man told me, he said, my thing story was very simple. I wrote one sentence, I am a no good son of a bitch. Yes, Dusty.
Andrew, you talked about anger and guilt and fear. What do you do after anger arrives and you get into the emotion of uncontrollableness, or anger, not the anger like I know, but it's just uncontrollable, it's just there. What's the reason there? To find out the reason behind it, that maybe it didn't happen.
You mean the self-well-enough of uncontrollable anger?
Yeah.
I think it's these forces at work that we've been talking about tonight that happens again and again. Something triggers an overreaction. Something happens that keeps, for instance, your defensive goal, really what happens. And what has been repressed for years and years and years, and is still largely repressed, is comes bubbling up like a volcano. Some little tiny thing, and there's an uncontrollable anger. And it's this ancient anger that has been diverted, back, expressed in other ways. It comes up this time as the real thing, anger. And it frightens you because you think you love control. And I found that if you can keep from hurting somebody, I generally manage to do this because nearly every time this happened to me, I was in the presence of people bigger than me. Sometimes I didn't. Sometimes I hurt people. Sometimes I lashed out. This is a very common thing. Anger does not go away. It has to either be understood and expressed, or it will be masked, pushed down, and come up in some other way. I think you had a question?
Alan, I guess this is about the same line as Sheila asked. I mean, you're going to cover what happened after you realize you start playing the game.
I'll try to next week. If I started on the answers now, they would be very incomplete, and I really don't have any time for them. I think the place down here, but I'll get to you. Yes, you have a question?
Well, I was going to ask, how does the newcomer go about picking the right sponsor?
The question is, how does the newcomer go about picking the right sponsor? Well, I didn't choose the sponsor. He chose me. Hold on. Two of them did, and they never let me out of their sight. I would choose somebody whose approach toward AA, whose approach toward survival, whose approach toward life I admire. I would go up to them and say, would you mind helping me and seeing if we can work out a relationship that would lead to your being my sponsor? That's all I would. Back here.
Yeah, I'd like to find out about remorse in the past, how they correct the problems
would you
remorse over the past mistakes?
Yes.
And falling into an expression of overwhelming amount of remorse against yourself.
Well, were you here last week when we talked about guilt? Remorse is this bitter disappointment again. The child's bitter disappointment. He's expressing himself over again. Now, an adult, he's got it very greatly rationalized. He's got a whole behavior that he uses for forever. Everything is wrong. the Ten Commandments, the latest decision of the Supreme Court, is guilt for his mill. It's as his own disappointment at not winning approval, at not winning love, at not being love for yourself alone. For I'm thinking that your worth is based upon your performance. So therefore, if your performance fails, you're going to be tormented by the law. Now, this is why we try to understand that this began with a subjective guilt that had nothing to do with performance. It was the guilt of guilt being passed on to you as a legacy. And that's what brings on this depression. It is a false standard, a false frame of reference that we've been carrying with us all these years. This idea that our worth in God's eyes and in the eyes of the world is constantly based upon our performance. So therefore, if we're going to have any worth, our performance has to be without flaw. So you see, it's an illusion, it's an unreal thing. Next week we'll talk about this. And when the thing that I've had and also that they drop words like because of this deep neurosis, to drop phrases like the best of my ability. And this constant bringing up this erotic frame of reference, this erotic goal of measuring against it, because you see, you want to fail. Fail is part of the bit that we've been talking here. We think we are on the escape route. We are saying we're trying to survive. What we are trying to do is fail. We are defending against intolerable fear, intolerable guilt, intolerable anxiety by punishing ourselves. We are embarked on a self-destructive course. And it is turning this around. Letting us see that the survival kit is in truth a destruction kit, that we turn the thing around and have a whole new frame of reference in a whole new way. Who was that? Was the answer?
Something such as an old reaction is uncontrollable anger. Would this be also uncontrollable anxiety, fear, triggering of an old reaction?
Well, anger is always. There's element of fear in anger. Yes.
I was expressing anger. I was not very serious. And I thought that that's the same thing.
No, I wouldn't. Maybe you're giving yourself a little praise there. I wouldn't call fear anger and anger fear. When they come along, you can recognize them.
Now, in your opinion, is it possible to achieve empathy goals while still under the influence of alcohol, drugs, or pot?
No. I think this is why we come to AA in a chorus saying, I tried religion and it failed. I tried psychiatry and it failed. I tried medicine and it failed. I tried all those things. We tried all those things and it failed because we were, not only were we playing these games and working this perfect kit over time, but we were muddling up the whole process by getting this all more dumbed down than it was. And so I don't think any of these things can be done. I say this, once you do sober up and once you try to begin to do this, I believe that everybody has found that these things have been very, very helpful retroactively. Anything that they have done. This has certainly been my case that every day in AA and every day of my sobriety, I drew on things that I had done before, but I had failed. They had not worked. I think there's time for one more question because we got a late start.